So you're excited on one hand, now that you're finally pursuing your entrepreneurial vision, but at the same time, you're petrified because you don't have money to pay your bills. You wish you had done a better job of planning in advance because you probably haven't saved enough to cover your expenses until you land your first customer. You probably don't qualify for a loan because of your credit rating, which is only going to get worse as you start to pay bills late or not at all. So our solution is to chase every prospective customer as if every customer is a good customer. And this is the quickest way to fail. You've probably had an experience in your past that's taught you this lesson, but you probably didn't realize what you were learning at the time. One of the first lessons I learned in my career took decades for me to realize what I had been taught. Let me explain. At 20, I graduated with my bachelor's degree in business with a major in marketing and a minor in accounting from the University of Oklahoma. I returned home to New York City to start my first corporate job as a sales rep for Xerox Corporation, where I was given a sales territory covering the 5 northernmost counties in New Jersey. GPS technology wasn't sold commercially in 1979, so every night I take out my Hagstrom maps and plot out the next day. I'd pick a city, map out where all the business office parks were in the city, then I'd knock on the door of every company in an office park for 8 hours a day to make my 3 machine sales per month quota. Xerox sales policy at the time was to put you on probation when you missed your quota in any given month, then terminate you if you missed quota for 2 consecutive months. I lasted at Xerox for 2 years, but eventually got fired after missing quota for 2 consecutive months, even though all my peers in the same situation were given the option of transferring to the service department. It's hard to absorb much of anything when you're getting fired for the first time in your career, but I learned something incredibly valuable that led to me getting my next job with AT&T. At some point, it occurred to me that people tended to call their copying machines Xerox machines because the process of making copies is also called xerography. Once I realized this, I started routinely flashing my Xerox badge and telling receptionists that I was in the building to fix their Xerox machine. This almost always got me past the receptionist, at which point I would walk around until I found the largest office and would then knock on the door to introduce myself. The lesson I learned from Xerox was that when you laser focus on becoming the dominant supplier of solutions for the problems of a niche target market, eventually your name becomes synonymous with the product or service you sell. And when you decide to expand beyond your target market into new markets, your name precedes you. I mentioned earlier that this lesson led to me getting my second job. This happened because a district manager for a competitor who was shadowing one of his sales reps for the day approached me on one of my cold calls after I was able to get past a receptionist they couldn't. Fast forward several decades to the point where I'm about to launch a new tech venture. My 2 co-founders and I pooled $2,000 in startup funds to launch our new venture in the 200 square foot loft of a relative's townhouse. When one of my co-founders quit his tech support job, 6 of his customers followed him to our new venture. Unfortunately, the revenue from these first 6 customers was only sufficient to pay one co-founder a full salary, one co-founder a half a salary, and one co-founder no salary. Guess which co-founder I was? I didn't collect a salary for the first full year of the business. Since 2 co-founders had spouses and small children, and the third was engaged to be married, you can imagine the pressure we were under to generate more revenue immediately. And then the lesson I'd learned from Xerox about laser focusing on a niche target market you can dominate came flashing back to me. I started thinking about my experiences with contracted technical support throughout my career. You call for help when something breaks, only to have to wait too long for a tech to show up. When the tech does arrive, you can't understand a word they're saying, and they have the personality of a rock. And as soon as they tell you the problem's fixed and leave, your machine breaks again. Since I knew this described the experience most small business customers have with contracted technical support, I figured we could dominate the small business market if we could figure out a way to provide enterprise level support to small business customers at a price they could afford. So we laser focused on only servicing customers within a 10-mile radius of our office, since this would ensure that we could get to a customer in less than 20 minutes after they placed a service call. I also incorporated technical and psychological testing into our hiring process to ensure that techs had the skills they put on their resumes and had personalities that would allow them to productively engage with our customers. Now, so far, I've talked about the value of laser focusing on a niche target market you can dominate to succeed in entrepreneurship. But now I'd like to show you with an exercise how you can incorporate this into your business. We'll get through as many volunteers as possible over the next 15 to 20 minutes, so please raise your hand digitally if you'd like to volunteer, or tell us, what type of business do you either want to start or do you currently have?
Currently, I run a website design and marketing automation company.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions that only require a yes or no answer. And when we finish, you'll know how to identify a niche target market you can dominate.
Okay.
The first question is the product or service you sell already being sold by anyone, anywhere in the world? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right, that's always the right answer. So for this is for everyone. So one of the problems entrepreneurs have is we tend to be a little arrogant, and we think that we've created something new. The probability that you'll create something no one's ever invented before is as close to 0 as possible. So if you think of something really revolutionary, some revolutionary invention, I'm going to use the telephone as an example. History credits Alexander Graham Bell to having invented the telephone. He did not. Alexander Graham Bell was awarded the patent for the telephone in 1876. But Robert Hooke invented an acoustic telephone 209 years before Alexander Graham Bell was given a patent. Unfortunately, in 1667, the United States didn't exist. We didn't have a patent office, so he couldn't patent what he had invented. And even after Robert Hooke invented this acoustic telephone, there were a minimum of 5 other people who had invented variations of the telephone, including Thomas Edison. Not only that, but in 1876, when Alexander Graham Bell submitted his patent for the telephone, he was actually the second patent for the telephone submitted to the patent office on the day he submitted. What ended up happening was the patent office, because they had gotten 2 submissions, suspended awarding a patent for 90 days and asked for both inventors to provide additional information. Alexander Graham Bell was the person who, submitted additional information. Elisha Gray did not. And so Alexander Graham Bell was awarded the patent. But again, if we look at how history recounts what happened, we credit Alexander Graham Bell with having invented the telephone. But as I just mentioned, he did not. So my guess is none of us are going to invent anything as revolutionary as the telephone. And so the probability you would ever answer this question, no one else in the world has created what I've created. The probability of that is virtually 0. And so another reason why you never want to answer no to this question is you'll get asked this again when you're trying to raise capital. So it just gets asked in a slightly different way. So if you go to an investor trying to raise capital, they're going to ask you, do you have any competition? It's the same question, right? And if you say no, the meeting will continue, meeting will end, you'll leave the office, the investor will go on to Google or whatever search engine they use, and they will put in the search terms for whatever product or service you sell. If they find that product anywhere in the world, it could be in Tibet, you fall into one of 2 categories. Either way, you're not getting a deal. So category 1 is You were too lazy to do the research the venture capitalist or the investor just did. And so you didn't find this competitor. And investors are not going to invest in a lazy entrepreneur, right? The second category is you actually did the research and found that person, but you went in and purposely told the investor that there's no competition. So now the investor will consider you to be a liar, and investors don't invest in liars either. So either way, if you ever answer no to this question, do you have competition? Is anyone doing what you do anywhere in the world? Once you answer no, if you're in front of an investor, you can pretty much relegate yourself to not getting any money from that particular investor, because the probability no one in the world does what you're doing is as close to zero as you can possibly find. All right, Femi, second question. Is every possible customer who could purchase your product or service already being serviced by one or more of your competitors? Yes or no?
It's in between. Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no.
Okay. So I'll assume the answer for you is yes, but if the answer was no, then, well, actually, if we go back to that first question, if you actually were able to say that no, the product or service I'm selling and bringing to the market doesn't exist, that's your value proposition. That's what makes you unique, right? But again, the probability of that happening is pretty close to zero. So with the second question, if you answered no, that there are customers in the marketplace that aren't being serviced, that again is your value proposition. That's what I would tell you to focus on in terms of, going after a niche target market that you can dominate. Go after someone that no one else is already servicing. So let's say that with your web design services, you find that, no one's servicing anyone that has freckles on their face. Well, what I would tell you is start your business and focus on people who have freckles, because no one's servicing them. Then that's a clear differentiator. When someone says, Femi, what do you do? I provide web design services for people with freckles. No one else does that. That makes you incredibly unique. Dominate that market and then start to expand your market once you dominate that initial market. By the time you start to expand, everyone will know that, oh, Femi, that's the guy that only provides web services to people with freckles. Your name will precede you before you get to this new market you're trying to enter. And people will have heard you. That makes the sales process a lot easier. But let's say the answer was yes. So now we go to the third question. The third question is every customer who's being serviced happy with the service they're receiving? Yes or no?
No.
All right. So again, here's the value proposition. Before I get to that, let's assume you answered yes to all these questions. Yes, this product exists in the marketplace that I'm trying to bring to the market. Yes, everyone's being serviced. Yes, everyone's happy. My advice to you at that point is shut your business down and do something else, because you can't add value to the marketplace, right? And if you can't add value to the marketplace, the only path that you're going to go down is the path of failure, But you said no. Everyone is not happy. So my advice would be focus on the customers that are not happy, right? And there's three ways that you can create value to those customers. So one way is through speed of service. So if you've heard of the company Federal Express, this is how, when in 1970, when Fred Smith created Federal Express, this is how Fred Smith created value with Federal Express. And in the 1970s, we had the Postal Service, but the Postal Service wasn't reliable. They weren't quick. And so people were not really happy with the Postal Service. Fred Smith created Federal Express and said, well, if I could give you reliable postal service and get it to you faster than the post office, would you pay for that? And customer says, yes, we would. And you can see where Federal Express is now. So one way to add value is coming into the market and providing whatever service you provide faster than anyone else. The second way you could add value is through price. And this could be high or low, right? So the high example is Rolls-Royce. That's the Rolls-Royce model. So when Rolls-Royce came into the marketplace selling cars, cars existed already. Everyone had a car. But there were very wealthy people who didn't like the fact that if they went to a Ford dealership, let's say, and bought a Ford Taurus, the minute they drove off the lot, they saw 10 other Ford Tauruses that looked just like theirs. So they were like, well, if I had the option of, selecting everything on this car so that I had something that no one else in the world had, I'd pay more money for that. And so that's what Rolls-Royce marketed. They were like, we'll give you a bespoke car purchasing experience. On a Rolls-Royce, there are a limited number of models, and multiple people have the same model, but no two Rolls-Royces are the same. So even if you bought a Rolls-Royce Dawn, right, you get to pick everything on that car, from the paint on the outside to every option on the inside. And the probability two people are going to pick every single feature and functionality on a car, again, is probably as close to zero as you're going to find. So what Rolls-Royce owners know is that when I drive off the showroom floor, no one else in the world has this same car. And I'm willing to pay $250,000 to $1 million for the car because I want that experience. I'm able to do that. On the low side of the spectrum is that's the Walmart model. So when Sam Walton created Walmart in the 1970s, Sam Walton, said in the country and in rural environments, you can't go to a grocery store. You can't find them. You can't find department stores, right? And so I would venture to say most of us on this call, I wouldn't say all of us, but most of us don't live in the country. But we probably have relatives who do. And we've been to visit our relatives in the country. And when we've been there, our relatives might take us to, back in the day, the Walmart, right? And so now you go into the store and you pick up an item that you could purchase at home from whatever store, but you see that the price of this item in Walmart is literally half the price of what you pay back at home. So you're saying to yourself, well, if Walmart ever came to where I live, that's the only place I'd shop, right? And so what Walmart eventually did, they because no one was servicing rural environments, Walmart's originally only set up shop in the country. And they dominated that environment. And then they started to open stores in suburbs. And eventually they started opening stores in cities. So I'm in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I can tell you Walmart has driven Kmart, Sears, you name it, Strawbridge and Clothier, virtually, every, JCPenney, almost every store that I grew up, remembering going into shopping from, doesn't exist anymore because of Walmart. And I remember talking in giving a speech in Detroit back in March, and I mentioned this to someone in the audience, and they said, Walmart actually sells their products at less than other stores can actually purchase their products wholesale, which is why they've driven everyone out of business. And so then the last way you can add value in this scenario is through the range of options that you provide a consumer, right? And this is the Amazon.com model, right? So when Amazon.com launched in the 90s, they launched as a bookseller online. So you had Barnes and Nobles, you had Borders, other bookstores, but no one was selling books online. So they came into the marketplace and said, the way we're going to differentiate, we're going to sell books like other people. We're just going to sell them exclusively online. And that took off. And so now you can literally buy virtually anything on Amazon.com. Again, at this speech in March in Detroit, again, jokingly, I mentioned this example, and someone from the audience again chimed in and said, because I said jokingly, you could probably buy a house online, on Amazon. And someone from the audience says, you actually can. She said 3D printed houses are sold on Amazon. And I was like, I did not know that. I was just joking. But it's literally, you can buy virtually anything on Amazon now, right? So that's the third way. So it's speed of service, provide your product or service faster than everyone else, provide it at a different price point, whether it be higher or lower than your competition, or provide such a wealth of a purchasing experience for your customer, where you're doing so many different things for them that no one else is doing. That's why they buy from you. Are you providing something no one else is providing? If you are, that's your value proposition. That's how you go to market and differentiate yourself. Again, that's incredibly rare. If your product or service exists, look for patches of consumers that aren't being serviced by anyone, and focus on them. And that can literally be one customer. You can learn everything you need to learn to scale a business from literally one customer, because once they buy from you, camp out at their office and just barrage them with questions on why they purchase from you, and they will give you all the answers to figure out how to scale your business and get other customers who are just like them. But if everybody's being serviced, then find ways to differentiate either through speed of service, price, or range of purchasing options for your customers. And so, Femi, thank you very much for volunteering. Claudette, I'll go through this with you, so you can unmute yourself, and we'll start this all over. Actually, I don't need to do this. I don't need. So I know these questions. So Claudette, first question. Well, first, tell us what you do.
So, hi guys, my name is Claudette Forbin, and I am a financial services professional.
All right. So does anyone else in the world offer the products or services you provide to your customers?
Yes.
All right. Are there customers in the marketplace who are not being serviced by at least one or more of your competitors?
Yes.
Okay. So everyone is being serviced?
No, everybody is not being serviced.
Right. That's what I thought you meant. I
Yeah,
asked the question wrong. I apologize for that.
Is there anybody that said yes? There are people that are not being serviced. Okay.
I apologize. I misasked the question. But so for you, what I would tell you to do, my advice would be to focus on whatever group or groups aren't being serviced as a way to establish your business and gain traction in the marketplace and dominate, servicing that group. Because again, whoever that group is, once you become the dominant player, you're going to become known as, when someone mentions your name, it's like, oh, Claudette, we know Claudette is the financial service person who works with X, whatever that group is. And now people are talking about you all the time, and they know who you are. And so now it's like, okay, well, I've dominated this particular market. I want to expand. Well, expanding is easier, when people have heard your name and know what you do, right? I say all of this having started my career in sales. The first 11 years of my career was in sales, both with Xerox and AT&T. And I also know that, I learned something very quickly, that the easiest way to sell is through service, not through sales, right?
Mhm.
So, because people don't trust salespeople. We inherently don't trust salespeople because you don't understand their motivations for why they're talking to you in the first place. You don't know whether they understand your needs, and that's why they're talking to you, which would be, great if that were the case. That's rarely the case. Or they're being disproportionately compensated to sell a particular product or service, and that's why they're trying to pitch that product or service to you. And that's probably greater than 90% of the time why they're trying to pitch something to you, right? So, and that's why we don't trust salespeople, which is why it's easier to develop relationships with customers, and then try to sell again through service, or get someone to refer you to someone that they actually trust, and then that way, if you're coming to them through a trusted relationship,
Mhm.
that barrier that we normally place in front of salespeople gets either lowered or eliminated.
Okay.
So thank you. Anyone else? Let me look at where we are for time.
We have Patricia.
All right, so
Yes.
Patricia, I'll let you be the last one. So Patricia, question number one. Well, before we start with the questions, tell us what you do.
Well, I seem to be in the same business as Claudette. I'm in
Okay.
World Financial Group. Is that correct, Claudette?
Yeah. Claudette is saying she's better at it, though. Yeah.
She could be.
Yeah, right. All right. So we've already have established that, from Claudette, that other people do what you do. So we don't have to ask you the first question. But then the second question is, are all customers that could utilize your product or service, are they being serviced by one or more competitors?
They are not.
Okay. So again, like I was saying for Claudette, my advice to you would be, to whoever that group is, I would laser focus on servicing only that group until you become the dominant provider of your products or services to that group.
Mhm.
Because once you do that, again, people will, just like the example I gave you with Xerox, you'll get to a point where you'll walk in and you just say, hey, I'm Xerox, I'm here to fix your machine. And they could have a Minolta machine for all they know, but they're like, oh, we call it a Xerox machine. So you said you were from Xerox, I'm gonna let you in, and they don't even have a Xerox machine. So that's where you want to get. But you get to that point by laser focusing on a target group of people that no one else is servicing, and exclusively servicing that group until you become the dominant supplier of your product or services to that group, and then you start to expand. And it's much easier to expand once you do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to jump back into presentation mode. So before we get to your questions this week, I just want to thank everyone for attending the second of 6 sessions of Entrepreneur University on Alignable. Next Monday, I'm going to discuss and guide you through the process of forming unconventional strategic alliances to gain an advantage over your competitors. So with the time we have left, I'd like to answer whatever questions anyone has about what we've covered tonight. All right, Michael, go ahead.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing well, and you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. I have a question. The 3 areas that you said that you want to pick, can you actually have a niche in all 3? For example, if you have a niche for number 1, and then you have a price that your competitors don't have, and then for the third one, which is offering let's say a cadre of, not a cadre of services, meaning everything for everyone, but having a unique service within your, and I'm speaking more of my field, because obviously I know my field and I know what they're doing. I know the direction that they're going in, and that's not the direction I'm going in.
Right.
So that's really my question. Can you, like I said, without making myself too thin? Can I hit the 3 areas and make that my niche also?
Yeah. So and just, let me know if I'm not answering your question, fully, but you actually can differentiate in more than one way. So it is possible that you could invent something that no one else has ever thought of. But again, there are 8 billion people on Earth. So the probability that any one person out of the 8 billion on Earth is going to come up with a unique idea that no one else has ever thought of, again, is just incredibly rare, right? So my guess is that's not going to be something anyone would have. However, and where people get caught up is someone will say, well, hey, I created this app, to do something with, in terms of how service gets provided this way. And so because I invented this app, I'm doing something no one else is doing. No, you're not. You're just doing it a different way, but you're other people do what you do. You may be doing it more efficiently because of that app, but you're not, you haven't created something new, right? So again, that first one, I try to get entrepreneurs to steer as far away from saying, hey, I'm the first one to ever think of this, because again, if the goal is to exponentially build your business, you can only grow organically to a point. You're going to have to raise capital at some point. And when you do, again, when you get into the room with an investor, I've gone to school with most of them. I've raised capital from debt and equity from virtually every type of investor you can think of. So I trust me, I know how they think. If they're going to ask you, do you have competition? Again, that's that first question again. Is anyone doing what you're doing anywhere in the world? Right? It's just asked a different way. You're gonna put yourself in a horrible position if your answer is no. Because again, if they find someone who does, you've either lied to them or you've been too lazy to do the research they just did to find someone that does what you do. Either way, at least with that investor, you're not getting any money, because investors don't invest in liars and they don't invest in lazy entrepreneurs, right? So then you get down to, are there segments of the population that aren't being serviced? That could actually be the case, right? So you could differentiate that way. You could say, okay, well, I'm going to service this group, this population that no one else services, doing what I do. But then you could also, on top of that, still differentiate in that, on top of the fact that you service this one group that no one else is servicing, you might still provide your product or service faster than anyone else, even though they're not servicing the group you're servicing. At some point you're going to leave that not leave, but expand outside of that group that you're servicing, and then you're going to come up against competition. So it actually it would behoove you to differentiate in more than one way, right? So because when you get out into kind of the world where you're competing against other competitors, if you're already, more expensive, less expensive, faster, providing a better range of options for your customers than anyone you're going to ultimately end up competing against, you don't have to reinvent yourself. Who you were when you entered the marketplace is going to carry you a lot farther. So hopefully I've answered your question. If not, let me know.
Actually, you did, and as I said, but now, like you said, and I know I'm not unique in that, and I'm not trying to be like this. Look, there are court reporters all over.
Yeah.
That's the point. But my industry is. I know how I can really differentiate myself because it's going in a certain direction, and I believe it's the wrong direction. And I've queried, my not only my clients, but what are you looking for in the reporters? And everyone's kind of going down that GM Oldsmobile, make them bigger, not efficient, and we're going to keep doing that, and not,
Right.
and that's how they're still going, and they're not really listening to the clients because they figure there's nobody else in town.
Right. Yeah.
So and like you're being a little bit, most of the firms are national now, which is true.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they have a longer reach, but like you said, I don't, um, I just, like you said, believe in that direction that I'm going. But I did want to ask you if there's, because in each of those areas, there's a uniqueness that I can introduce, or,
Yeah,
or like you said, or differentiate myself, like you said, in
right,
those
right.
three areas.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be, like you said, too thin.
Right, right. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Femi, I see your hand is raised, so if you want to unmute.
Okay, thank you so much. I would say I've learned a lot today. Thank you so much. So this is my question. How many niches can you focus on at the same time? It always looks like you are missing out on something. For example, the kind of service I provide, web design and automation. Almost every small business owner needs what I do. So how do I decide? I mean, do I really have to stay with one niche, or I can just select a list of niches and work with them at the same time? What do you advise? Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So as you were speaking, what came to mind is the joke of how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So my advice to you is again, and I think I mentioned this in the presentation in the beginning. One of the quickest ways you can fail as an entrepreneur is trying to be everything to everybody, and I get it. When I started my IT firm, like I said, I didn't pay myself for the first full year. So, and I was one of the two partners who had a wife and kids, and my kids were young. And so, I trust me, I was getting beat over the head every day I came home. When's the money gonna start? So yeah, so the with the pressure of having to pay bills, not having money, it's like I need to sell to everybody. Every customer is going to be a good customer. I need money. But I had to fight that inclination, because again, that's the quickest way to fail. You've got to, at the end of the day, people have to know that you're different in some way, shape, or form. And the way to do that is to laser focus on servicing one niche, one customer. I tell people all the time, you can learn what you need to learn literally from one customer. Once you get that customer, camp out at their office, ask them, hey, why did you decide to do business with me? Why did you buy what you bought from me? How are you using what you bought from me? How is what you bought from me making a difference in your business? Quantify that for me. There are a ton more questions you could ask. Those are the ones that are coming off the top of my head. But when they give you those answers, I mean, you've now got all the marketing material in the world. You can go out to any other customer, because they're going to ask you, like, well, why should I buy from you? Well, because I've got this other customer. And what are you doing for them? Oh, this is what I'm doing. And how are they benefiting? This is how they're benefiting. And let me quantify this for you. This is how it's impacting their bottom line, right? They're like, wow, can I reach out to that customer? Absolutely. And then once they do that and they do their due diligence, it's like, okay, well, you're doing everything you said you could do. I got confirmation from the customer. You might as well do it for me, right? So, and then it just builds and builds and builds, right? So, it starts with one customer, then you get 2, then you get 4, then you get 8, then you get 16. It literally, that's how you succeed as an entrepreneur, not by trying to be everything to everybody, because there aren't enough hours in the day to be everything to everybody, right? And so you're not going to do it well. Now, when you're a multi-billion-dollar business and you have thousands of employees, yeah, you can service hundreds of niches, but you have the resources to be able to support all of those customers. When you're first starting, it may just be you. And so, if you think you're going to effectively service 100 customers by yourself, well, you can try if you want to, but, write down on a piece of paper that I told you you're going to fail. and we'll just take bets on how long it's going to take you.
Okay,
So
thank you.
Anything else?
I wouldn't
Okay.
want to have that experience.
All right. Thank
I'll
you.
just take your advice.
All right. All right.
Thank you so much.
Jezreen, I see your hands
Before we
up
come to
and help-
Jezreen, we have a question in the chat from Jonas. Just a second there, Jezreen. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So Jonas is asking, saying, I also come from a door-to-door sales background, so I can appreciate the efforts of hours of knocking. I have a webinar and other teaching opportunities set up similar to this. How do I maximize these to generate clients from them predictably? How do you guys do this process?
I'm asking questions to understand the question better. So you have a door-to-door sales business, and you're knocking on doors, obviously, but you have a webinar associated with how you market your business. I need some clarification.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So I came from a door-to-door background in the past.
Mhm.
Now I'm not doing door-to-door anymore.
Okay.
I'm doing like business services. We get businesses, we renegotiate their vendor contracts on their behalf, and we get them like 30, 50% discounts. So what we do, so basically what I have now is I'm looking for more opportunities to sell. And I got a webinar set up with, it's kind of like, it's not a Chambers of Commerce, but it's kind of similar. It's like a government funded program that helps businesses learn business skills. So I got a webinar with them that I'm going to be teaching business skills, and there's a couple other things like that. I'm trying to figure out, how do I make sure that I leave everyone with skills taught, they learn new things, but at the end of it, I can actually predictably create new clients out of it. So every time I set up something like that, I know based on their audience, I can kind of predict what a result I'm going to get out of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we're leaping forward in terms of what I'm going to teach. Is there's a couple elements in what you're asking. So the first element is, along the lines of what we've covered today. You've got to figure out, how do you differentiate yourself from anyone else doing what you're doing? So that gets back to the three questions of, really, you're going to leap to question 2 and 3. What is every potential consumer for what you sell being serviced by someone? And if the answer is no, then what I would suggest you do, again, is laser focus on that niche that no one's servicing. You can still do 3 on top of that, but that would be enough if you were servicing a market no one else is servicing. But what you still could do, and this gets back to Michael's question, is you could, on top of servicing a niche no one else was servicing, you could provide the service faster at a different price point, higher or lower, or provide this compendium of services that no one else, this rich, very rich purchasing experience that no one else is giving your customer. So that's kind of and what I would do is, if you've been doing this for a while and you have, a bunch of customers, then I would look at, that customer base that you have and see where there are commonalities in the customer base, because you may already be servicing a particular niche and you're just not even aware of it, and so that would be the one piece of it. I mean, the other piece of it is, how do you effectively sell to that niche, right? And I'm going to cover that in a couple of weeks, but the sneak peek I'll give you is that when I have businesses, I don't hire salespeople, because they're the least effective way to sell something, right? You sell through, and I'm going to cover this in 2 weeks. You take your customers and you provide such a high level of customer service that you transform your customers into evangelists. Now what your customers do is they buy everything you sell for the duration of your business, And the next thing they do, which is almost as good, if not better, is they refer you to all of their peers, right? So they become an external sales force for you. The beauty of having a customer sell for you is that when they're talking to peers, their peers already trust them. They also have experience working with you. So they can answer all the questions that you would need to answer for a potential customer. They'll get answered before they even get to you. So now by the time you get a referral from a customer, all you need to, if you talk too much, you'll actually screw the sale up. All you need to do literally is almost give them a contract. They know what they've already heard from your customer, everything they need to hear, right? Another group that you want to do is, and this is what I'm going to get into next week. You want to form strategic alliances with their 4 distinct quadrants of, or groups of people that you want to form strategic alliances with, and they're much bigger companies, but they're your suppliers, they're your customers, they're companies that provide complementary products and services to the products and services you provide, and they're actually competitors as well. So you'll hear me talk next week about when I had my IT firm, I partnered with Dell Computer. Now, technically, Dell Computer was a competitor of mine because we were both in the information technology space. Trust me, Dell Computer did not consider my company, Cognis IT, competition, but the beauty was, and the reason they partnered with me is because, again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but if you have the opportunity to talk to, if you have any friends that are working with, say, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, and they were with that company since it launched, sit them down over a beer or whatever your favorite drink is, and ask them, when did they have the most fun working in the company? I guarantee you they will tell you when the company first launched, when they had no money, couldn't pay bills. But, whoever was there, we all ate together. We knew each other's spouses, kids. We went to everyone's, little league games and, all that kind of, that's when it was fun. We didn't have, layers of management and bureaucracy. We didn't have to ask anyone permission to do anything. We saw an opportunity. We just did it. That's when business is fun. And this is why I tell people, start your business with an exit strategy. I hope I'm able to help everyone build their business to a point where you have multi-billion-dollar businesses. But I pretty much, if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably not going to want to work for your company when you get to that point, because it's not going to be the company you started, and it's not going to be fun. Entrepreneurs don't like bureaucracy. Entrepreneurs don't like to be told how to do what to do, so, you want to build your company at that point, but you also want to extract capital to create generational wealth for yourself and your family, and then go on and do something else. You could start another startup, but at this point, you've got enough capital to finance your own startup. And oh, by the way, when you get to that point, guess what? It's going to be easier to raise capital. Even though you have the capital, you won't even have to use it. People will throw money at you. When they've seen you launch something and take it to an exit and a successful exit, people will throw money at you because now you're a known quantity. They know what you can do. So the risk of investing in a startup goes away when you're investing in an experienced and successful and accomplished entrepreneur. So I hopefully I answered your question fully. If I didn't, let me know. All right. Jezreen, you can unmute yourself, please. And
yes, like I'm with Legal Shield and I give access to legal services, protecting businesses, their employees, and families.
okay.
So when we are giving a presentation about the services we provide, if we are talking to a company that have a huge company and they have employees. We go in and we form a group and they get good discount.
Okay,
But if I'm talking to, like I spoke to a law firm today, and she didn't know what I do yet, and she asked me how she may help me. And then I introduced myself and I said, "You are an attorney." And she said, "Yes." And she has many lawyers on her team. And I said, "Yes. I provide legal services to folks at a rate that is affordable. But I know that many individuals cannot afford the fees, the hourly fees that you charge." And she said, "Yes, I do agree. And what I'll do is put you on our list as referral."
right. Yep. So I didn't get the question. Was there a question?
What I'm asking with me, I don't need a loan, because we can work from home or anywhere. So it would be different for me in your case, what you've been presenting.
Well, you can still apply what I've talked about, even with, I mean, I'm familiar with Legal Shield. I know several people that, are with Legal Shield. So when you're marketing to potential customers, one of the ways that you could differentiate as a Legal Shield rep is, again, you could target a market that, you might see a group of customers that no one else is servicing. Maybe it's military veterans, maybe it's, African Americans, maybe it's, minorities in general. I mean, it could be, whatever the case may be. It's but it could be small businesses, that can't afford to pay the legal fees of a big law firm, right? So that would be one way. But you could also, you've talked about the cost, the cost differential. I mean, the reason why Legal Shield is so attractive, particularly for a small business, is the price point that you market your services at. So here this is the Walmart low cost model, right? Where you're providing services at a price point that a large law firm doesn't want to match.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what differentiates you.
Yeah.
We're jumping forward because what I'm going to cover next week is forming strategic alliances. But when you talk about, being on, I'm assuming it was a LinkedIn or an alignable event where you had a breakout session with an attorney. Maybe it wasn't, but let's assume it was. And that attorney's with a bigger firm that charges, high fees. But I mentioned one of the groups that you want to form strategic alliances with are competitors. And in some cases, they could be considered a complementer, right? So they're in your field, right? This is like me having an information technology support service firm and partnering with Dell Computer. Dell does what I did, but they're so much larger, that they didn't view me as a competitor. And because I was a small business, they have a huge marketing budget. So they get leads all the time for opportunities, but they don't pursue every opportunity. There are some opportunities that are too small for them.
Yeah.
Right. And so if they have a trusted small business partner that they can refer those leads to that they don't want to pursue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great business it was great business for me because I didn't have to do any work to find that opportunity. All I did was share some of the profit with Dell for referring that opportunity to me. I did all the work, but I didn't have to do anything other than provide a contract to the prospective customer, do the work, bill them, collect the fee, and then send Dell, in essence, a commission, right? But it's the easiest sale I could ever make.
Yeah.
And you could do the same thing with this larger law firm. And, so when the inclination for people that do what you do would initially be, hey, I got, I'm at this event and I have a breakout session with an attorney from a big firm. Oh, this is a waste of my time. No, not necessarily. because again, there are going to be opportunities that that law firm isn't going to pursue because, you know, of their billing rate. But because maybe it's a big firm, Morgan and Morgan, let's say, and they're advertising on TV all the time, they're getting leads, you know, people are just calling them with opportunities, right? But then when they're looking at these opportunities, they're saying, we're not going to pursue that, because when we tell them what our fee is, they're not going to pay that. They're not in a position to be able to pay it.
Yeah.
But if we knew Jezreen and had a relationship with Jezreen, for those opportunities, we could just refer them to her.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, if you can, you know, and then they're just going to monitor how well do you do what you do, right? And if you provide the best customer service, you know, since sliced bread to that customer, those referrals they give you, they're just going to keep giving you more referrals.
And you know something, some of the attorneys do become an associate and do the service because they said it's less headache for them and they get paid.
Yeah, you know? And again, if you have some kind of profit sharing agreement with them, it's money into their organization for work they don't have to do.
Yeah,
they're just making referrals.
Yeah,
you know, and so when you look at that probably might be the most profitable, you know, money that they get. It's you good. Know, because the you know, there are virtually no costs associated with those referrals. You know, they're just making a phone call to you. You're doing all the work. You're doing all the billing. You're doing all the collecting. You're then sending them a check. You know, so now it's, hey, I got this lead. I referred it to Jezreen and I get a check, you know, a couple weeks later. Hey, this is fantastic. You know?
Yeah.
When I look at, you know, hey, I got $10 from Jezreen, but I only had to put in $1. You know, I got 90% profit on this. When they do work, you know, they bill what they bill to clients because they have to pay the attorneys what they have to pay the attorneys. So when you look at when they have to actually provide services, you know, the profit margin on the services they provide are probably they're not going to be anywhere near 90%. They might be 10 or 20%.
Yeah.
So if you can get a nice stream of 90% money, you know, you're going to pursue that all day long instead of the business you do where you're only getting 10 or 20%.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just want to step in and say we are at the top of the hour, just a couple minutes past 8. The program does go from 7 to 8. If you have more questions, Jeff will be here till about 8:30 Eastern. Anybody will have more questions, you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. We'll field them from there. I'll put a link again in the chat if you want to register for our next session. That is in there, but we're just letting you know we are wanting to.
Can we save the
at
chat?
Yes, you can. Yeah, go ahead and save the chat. For anyone who doesn't know how to save the chat, you just go to the bottom. It used to be at the bottom right. Now it's at the bottom middle. Click those 3 dots there.
Yeah.
And then hit save chat. And you'll be able to save the chat. Also, if you're looking for, if you want to watch the replay, it will be available here in about maybe 48 hours. So I'll put that link in the chat as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions?
That was great.
Thank you.
I guess I got on late. It was toward the end. I guess I'm in Central Time, so.
Oh, okay. Well, we're happy to have you no matter when you come. So if you have a question, fire away.
I enjoy what I heard, and I do believe in that. You know, collaborating and sharing is the way. It's happier. You be happier, and you get more money that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say two brains are better than one. So, you know, hey,
exactly.
You know, you might as well collaborate with other people and make your life easier.
Mm-hmm.
Femi, I see you got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I said, let me maximize all the opportunity I have with you. Okay, the question of pricing now. For example, my business, we are launching a new arm of the business, and you know, the question of pricing has been coming to my head. You don't want to go too low, and you know, cut yourself in the leg. You don't want to go to I and chase away people who really need your services. So is there any formula? Is there any advice you want to give on knowing the right price to give your potential clients? Thank you.
Yeah, there really is not a formula per se. You know, the best, I mean, you're going to want to do two things. So you're going to want to experiment. So you might actually want to have multiple prices and try it on different marketplaces to see what reaction you get from the market. But at the end of the day, I mean, your customers are going to tell you, so talking to them to understand what their problems are and how you can come up with solutions, unique solutions to those problems. Once you kind of get down that path, and you can actually then at that point even say, hey, what would you be willing to pay for this? And maybe give them a range, and then just, again, just try. I mean, you've got to experiment. I think, but there, to my knowledge, there's no tried and true formula as to, hey, if I ask these 10 questions and, I can plug them into a model and then I'll price my service at X. I'm not aware of that. It could exist, I'm just not aware of it. But what's worked for me is just talking to customers, and then trying different things, trying different price points. Another thing you can do is just doing the research to see what your competition is pricing at, because chances are they've done some of this research as well, and so they'll be able to give you a good idea of kind of what's too high, what's too low. The one in terms of, now there are, and this is kind of covered when you study marketing, there are pricing models that you can, there's something called cost basis pricing. So you can look at, what did it cost me to make and provide this service? And then, you would just add a profit margin on top of that. So if you figured out that in order for me to provide this service, it's going to cost me $1, right? You might then say, okay, well, what would I like in terms of a profit margin? Maybe 20%. So I'm going to price this at $1.20. Then it really, you have to just try it in the marketplace and see whether anyone buys. And if they don't, you're more than likely to price too high, one, or you haven't articulated to people, what value you actually are providing, because maybe you haven't taken the time to figure out a problem that needs to get solved, for a customer, so if you start by focusing on solving a problem, identifying a problem, and then solving it uniquely for a customer, most customers, if it's a big enough problem, they're not going to be price conscious. They'll pay almost, whatever you price at to get that problem solved if it's a big enough problem. Hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure.